Flying ships of any kind has always held a massive appeal to me. Frontier Pilot Simulator then combines ships with the challenge of hauling cargo through some fairly tough environments. The developers, Razer, recently reached out to me and asked if I would take another look at the game in this new sponsored video. The game is currently discounted by 21% and you can see a link in the video description. Do go check it out. Now, as you can see, I'm continuing on from my previous save and want to check out a few different things this time around. Of course, one of the main aspects of the game is hauling cargo, and you can see I'm actually picking up a crate of water here. Now, water might not seem like it would be an extremely valuable commodity, but it is abundant here on this little island, and we are going to take it to the outpost named North 1, which is quite a way away. It also happens to be located within a desert, so yep, naturally they are quite willing to pay a premium for water. So a moment ago you saw me navigating via the map. We saw North 1. It was a little bit too far away, I felt, for a single journey. We got some limited fuel. You can see that represented down on the bottom left of the screen. What we're going to do is stop off halfway at one of the other outposts, refuel and then continue onwards. So you may have noticed as I took off, we were using VTOL, that's vertical takeoff and landing. These craft do have two modes. We can fly them in VTOL mode or airplane mode. Now, airplane mode is very effective because not only does it save fuel, but it's also pretty fast, and you can actually set your speed here. You can kind of cruise very slowly as I'm doing here, which is kind of a nice, calm, casual approach to things. We can go much faster. Of course, if you go a little bit too slow, you will descend down. You do have to watch that. And by the way, the clouds here are volumetric. They do look very nice. I love the feel here. So one thing you will want to pay attention to is the weight of the cargo. This will affect your fuel consumption, but it will also affect how your ship actually handles and performs, and it's something I actually forgot here. Switched back to VTOL mode, not fully paying attention to the weight of the cargo, and look what happened. But not to worry, you do have an escape pod and your ship is insured. The ship will be replaced as soon as you land at the outpost here. And talking of which, you may remember from before that, you have a lot of upgrade options for your ships. You can also buy different types of ships. The Ox that I'm using here is one of the larger ones, slightly more expensive. You actually start out with a Scarab, which is far smaller. We'll have a brief look at that further into the video. You can also customize the coloration of your ships. The red trim I've got on the ship here, on the Ox, is actually a custom selection. So on these sides, the menus, you can see the various upgrades we've got. I've actually applied quite a few of these to the ship already. So the ship is fully recovered, fully replaced after my little accident there, my mishap. It's time to get underway. Now there is a reason I showed you the escape capsule there. This is basically because I wanted to show you two different perspectives, using the escape capsule yourself, as well as getting involved in the search and rescue mission. In that mission, we have to actually rescue someone who's got abandoned in their escape pod. But before we get to that, let's have a look at a little bit of flying around the environment here. As you can see, we're well above the sea level here, flying through the clouds, and we do actually get buffeted around somewhat by the wind. Wind and other weather factors do play a huge vital role in the way you're flying, way you undertake your flying, and the way the game plays out. If we get a little bit too high, for example, under these particular weather conditions, you're going to see what happens. Any moment now, there we go. So this is causing our ship to power down. You can hear we've lost engines. Things have gone very quiet. There you go. As we lose power, we'll start to slow down and descend. Slowly at first, and then more and more rapidly down toward the ground. But fortunately, the ship does power up again as the effect wears off. And hopefully, we can regain our altitude there. And yet, we're fine. So weather is certainly one of the aspects you'll have to watch out for as you're playing the game, because it will have some dramatic effects on how things play out. Now, as this is a sci-fi game, it's set in sci-fi environments, so you can fully expect to see sci-fi elements. There you go, you can just about hear them, I think, it's sort of rumbled in the background there. There's various different features dotted around the landscape and the environments, and from time to time you will encounter them. So then, on to that search and rescue mission I mentioned just a moment ago. This is located on the map on the larger island, there's a whole region there which we're going to have to actually go over and search because someone needs some help and they're stuck somewhere within that radius. It's not too far away. I'm currently situated at North 1. We're going to do this in the Ox because well, it's 14 kilometres away, so we're going to need the fuel reserves that this ship actually has. We could have done it in a smaller ship, but I'd be a little bit concerned of having enough fuel to actually get there. So, yep, using the VTOL to get off the ground and then heading on over to the airplane mode to conserve as much fuel as possible. Now there's a couple of ways you can actually play this. You can actually fly up a little bit higher and avoid all the landscape of the mountains, but the trouble is here that the destination isn't too far away, so if I ascend up very, very high, I'll then have to descend down as soon as we get near the location, and that's a surefire way to waste a lot of the fuel. And as this is a search and rescue mission, fuel is very much a huge concern for me, as I suspect we're going to have to keep flying around the search zone, and that's exactly what's going on here. So the crashed vessel, the person who needs rescue, whatever it is somewhere in this region, and it's just a case of tracking them down. It took me a little while actually to find them, until right here I saw the column of smoke coming from their crashed ship. But at this point I'm close to half a tank of fuel, so things were starting to get a little tense, because I've got to actually do whatever it is I need to do here, which is actually pick the person up and then get back to the base without running out of fuel, because we don't want to do that, as it will mean crashing. So it's the VTOL part which is going to use a lot of fuel. We can see that really burning away as we come in to land here, and I don't want to land too hard because the ship will take damage. If we take damage to the landing gears, it makes things a bit more difficult because it's hard to land without your landing gear. The other aspect, we could start taking damage to the wing engines, which are right on the edge of the ship, or maybe even the cargo bay. So as soon as we've landed here, the ship AI is in communication with us, and the guy does indeed need rescue. Now he has managed to escape from his ship in the escape capsule. It turns out the escape capsule is nearby, not right next door to his ship, unfortunately. So we're going to have to get up in the air again and go in search of the capsule. So this really is where skill starts to play a factor in things, because your flying skills will determine how much fuel you actually use and well, how much damage you would also take. And on missions like this, it's very, very important to fly as efficiently as you possibly can. Fortunately, it turned out the escape capsule wasn't too far away. Now, Frontier Pilot Simulator is updated fairly regularly. It gets updates roughly every 2 months, which of course means there's plenty of reasons to keep returning to the game. The updates are largely determined by conversations between the developers themselves as well as the community. Community feedback is very, very important to the developers. And this is something that's immediately apparent if you spend any time on their official forums or indeed on their Discord server. Now what's going on here seems to be a bit on the scary side, I'd imagine, especially for the guy trapped inside the rescue capsule. It seems he's been swallowed up by some sort of creature, maybe an alien or something, but fortunately you can retrieve the rescue capsule. You just got to position your ship just so. And talking of aliens, the game does have 2 different storylines. One does involve aliens, and the other involves smugglers. So there's all that in addition to the cargo running and the various missions. Right, I think we're good to go. Yep, there we go. We've retrieved the capsule. Poor guy in there. Now, he tells me his cargo hatch is actually jammed, so he can't get out of the escape capsule. So what we're going to have to do is take him to the nearest base, which looks to be North 1. So we're going to set that as the destination and head on over in that direction. But we are getting very, very low in fuel. What, 1/3 maybe? Getting down to 1/4 of a tank of fuel here. And getting off the ground, especially with the rescue capsule in the cargo hold, is going to consume even more fuel. So at this point, I've got to be perfectly honest, I was starting to get quite worried as to whether or not I was actually going to make it. Of course, the trick was to get into airplane mode as soon as possible, but the technique there was to do it without actually losing velocity and speed and crashing down into the ground, or indeed hitting at the side of the mountains, which from time to time I'm actually quite prone to do. Now fortunately I did make it back to the base, albeit with very little fuel and, well, hopefully with just enough to land. To keep an eye on the bottom left hand side of the screen, you can see the fuel consumption there, but you can also see damage to the ship. This is what I've sustained through various clips and knocks on the ship itself. And we're down. Now for some reason I couldn't drop the rescue pod off, as it just wouldn't leave my ship, and I had a feeling it may have been due to the damage on the cargo hold. At any rate, what I thought to do was go and refuel the ship and then return back here with everything repaired. So heading over to the hangar bay, that's exactly what we did. Look at the everything busying away there, repairing the ship and also refueling all the way back up. Nice job, easy done. And then it was time to make a second attempt at dropping off the passenger. And as you can see, he's more than happy with being brought back to the base. We just need to get him out of the cargo bay there. Right, so missions do carry on. There is another step to this particular mission. I'm not going to show it in this video because I don't want to get too much into the spoiler side of things. I'd much rather you test it out and try it out for yourself. But just be aware that these things can be multi-stepped. Now moving on, my next plan was to take this rather sensitive cargo to a destination. I wanted to try and get as much profit as possible on this, and you can see we do have that option. Pressing Y, set the most profitable cargo as target. So that's in there. Now one thing you will notice down on the right is the red bar, and this shows us that the cargo is actually pretty fragile. Now as we move around, you can see the white bar increasing and decreasing. If that goes into the red, the cargo will actually take damage. So a little bit of wiggling around there just to give you an idea of how that works. So travelling towards the destination to drop this cargo off, I went up a bit higher than when on the search and rescue mission, and this took me into the cloud layer. In the clouds it gets difficult to see, and that's where this rather handy VR mode comes in. Now all the arrows actually show the directions of the wind, and this is very, very useful, especially when you're in areas where wind plays more of an impact upon your navigation. But not only is this mode a good representation, a visual representation of what's going on with the weather and other such things, it also allows you to fly through very, very thick clouds and fog whilst still getting visuals on the environment and the landscape. A good way to avoid crashing into mountains then. Briefly, just before I go, here's a very quick look at the Scarab. This is the ship that you'll start out with. Very, very manoeuvrable and pretty fast. Bottom line, it makes a very good introduction to the game. Do check out the links in the video description. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.